Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Saturday everybody. One of the statements that came out of the Politburo meeting this week, which we covered in depth in Tuesday's episode, was about effectively guarding against and defusing of local debt risks and to formulate and implement a package of debt clearing plans, to use the language of the official readout. On Friday, Chinese financial media outlet Xpeng Global reported, citing an unnamed local government source, that the central government's new package of solutions may include swapping out of hidden debts of local governments to help them extend their repayment period and lower their interest costs. Of course, regular viewers know that local debt has become one of several major urgent systemic challenges facing policymakers in Beijing, and that several provinces, most infamously places like Guizhou and Kunming, are already at a stage of de facto default. The Chinese financial outlet writes that while some experts have called on the finance ministry to issue treasury bonds to raise funds to directly pay off some local debt, many others are strongly opposed. A popular alternative, Yicai reports, is to allow local governments to use a new special refinancing bonds tool to raise funds only to repay their respective hidden debts that have met certain criteria. But fiscal experts interviewed by Yicai Global believe, quote, that there is a clear limit to this scheme because the central government has already set an overall upper limit on local debt, and with local governments already deeply in debt, only about 2.6 trillion yuan, $363.5 billion of special refinancing bonds can be issued at present. Clearly not enough to address the massive hidden debt problem. So a more market-based approach is very much needed. End quote. Yang Yewei, chief fixed income analyst at Guoshang Securities, adds that the actual debt relief package will probably have 3 main planks: central government support, financial institutions' profit sharing, and partial settlement of local debt. We will continue following the local debt and fiscal crisis as it develops. Next up, yesterday, Friday, the United States announced $345 million in military aid for Taiwan. A U.S. Defense Department spokesperson told press that the package would contain defense education and training for the Taiwanese, including man-portable air defense systems, intelligence and surveillance capabilities, firearms and missiles. While U.S. lawmakers are typically quite hawkish on China, with both houses debating a slew of anti-Beijing and pro-Taipei bills in recent months, the White House typically takes a more balanced approach, needing to manage the U.S.-China relationship, as well as relations and concerns with key allies in Europe and Asia. Indeed, we remember that the U.S. has been trying to re-establish guardrails with the Chinese through mechanisms like a military-to-military communications channel, but to little success. However, this arms move represents the Biden administration's first major package, drawing on America's own stockpiles to support Taiwan against the mainland. For the White House, it's a significant move. Of course, Beijing is not happy with the decision, warning that it touches on a red line, with the Chinese embassy spokesperson expressing today, quote, China is firmly opposed to U.S.'s military ties with and arms sales to Taiwan. The U.S. must stop creating new factors that could lead to tensions in the Taiwan Strait. End quote. The U.S. response to this position is that increased mainland bellicosity necessitates greater deterrence through more U.S. support for Taipei, thus ensuring cross-strait stability. The package is in addition to nearly $19 billion in military sales of F-16s and other major weapon systems that the US has approved for Taiwan. Supply chain issues have hampered delivery of these weapons, however. For this reason, this package of weapons and support equipment will come from existing stockpiles under what is known as a Presidential Drawdown Authority, which lets the US sidestep the lengthy process of contracting and producing weapons. Through the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act, Congress has authorized President Biden to use as much as $1 billion in U.S. inventory for Taiwan, a sign of just how concerned some U.S. lawmakers are about the current state of tensions and increasing warnings of the risks of conflict. Outside of partisan rhetoric, the Biden move appears to enjoy fairly robust bipartisan support, with the Republican chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee expressing yesterday, quote, "I'm glad to see the Biden administration send this much-needed weapons package to Taiwan. However, this should have occurred much earlier and could have been more robust." End quote. UK-based Financial Times recently reported that the United States, Taiwan and Japan had agreed that they would share real-time data from MQ-9C Guardian drones, which are manufactured by US General Atomics. In a statement, Taiwan's Defense Ministry expressed on Friday, quote, "Taiwan and US will continue close cooperation on security topics to maintain the peaceful and stable status quo across the strait." End quote. On Thursday, Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs also thanked the US House of Representatives for passing the Taiwan International Solidarity Act on Tuesday. The US bill, if passed into legislation, would require the United States to support Taiwan's bids to join international organizations, and states that UN Resolution 2758, which recognized the People's Republic of China as the sole legitimate government of China in 1971, does not apply to Taiwan. Some argue that such a position severely undermines the legal basis for Washington's diplomatic relationship with Beijing, and of course further risks US-China relations. The bill must still be approved by the US Senate and then signed by US President Biden before it can become law. Meanwhile, also yesterday, Friday, the Japanese government issued its 2023 defense white paper, warning that China, Russia, and North Korea contribute to, quote, "the most severe and complex security environment since the end of World War II," end quote, adding that China's military activities have become a, quote, "serious concern for Japan and the international community and present an unprecedented and the greatest strategic challenge," end quote. The 510-page report includes plans to implement a new strategy that calls for a major military build-up, very much moving away from Japan's post-war policy limiting the use of force to self-defense, and also represents one of the most critical positions against China from an official Japanese government document. On Friday, China's foreign ministry slammed the report, calling it an interference in China's internal affairs and, quote, "deliberately plays up the so-called Chinese threat and creates tensions in the region," end quote. The report comes 7 months after Prime Minister Kishida's government adopted new national security strategies, which included doubling the defense budget to 43 trillion yen, $310 billion by 2027. Next up, we have one more development to cover. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit that like button. Liking, commenting, and especially sharing with people who you think would enjoy this sort of content is a massive help for the channel and is the primary way in which it can grow. And for anyone who can go the extra mile, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. It's just me making these episodes every day. It's a lot of work, but with your support, it makes it all worth it. So thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Finally for today, car maker Volkswagen AG has announced plans to invest $700 million in Chinese EV maker Xpeng Inc., XPENG, to jointly develop electric vehicles in China, a move the German company hopes will reverse sliding sales in the world's largest EV market. VW's chief financial officer recently said a 1% drop in Chinese car deliveries in the first half of the year had forced the group to lower its global delivery target for 2023. According to the Wednesday statement, VW will eventually hold a 4.99% stake in Xpeng via a capital increase and is receiving an observer board seat. European car makers appear to be increasingly wary of the growing challenge of competitive Chinese production. Quote, "We're facing an incredibly brutal scenario. On the one hand, we're supposed to compete with Chinese rivals which are 25% less expensive. On the other hand, we're told to make do with an extra 40% in costs driven by the electrification of cars," end quote, adding that Chinese automakers are engaging in a, quote, "extremely powerful offensive," end quote, into international markets. And it's not just Europeans concerned. This week, speaking to UK-based Financial Times, Japanese-based Nissan's chief executive described the growing challenge in China as, quote, a wake-up call, end quote. And while we're on this topic, finally, in a move very telling in how Beijing views smart vehicles, US financial media outlet Bloomberg reports that Tesla vehicles have been barred from parts of Chengdu as the Sichuanese provincial capital prepared for a visit by Xi Jinping on Friday. According to an unnamed source, authorities in the city of 21 million people told officials to block Teslas from some areas related to the event and Xi's visit. Teslas have been prevented from entering Chinese military compounds, housing compounds, and other sensitive areas in recent years. The concern being related to sensitive data being collected by cameras built into the vehicles. With Chinese car makers now aggressively pushing into international markets, this raises an obvious question. Quote, if the PRC sees Tesla as such a security risk, why should other countries not view PRC-connected vehicles as security risks too? End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a wonderful Saturday, a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday.